Hello everyone, welcome to the hologram wire project. If you want to see how the geometry node setup was created, check out the link in the description to the Geonodes Daily tip 110, because in this video we will be looking at the materials that create this project. And no doubt the hero of this video will be the hologram preset that I created here, that works in conjunction with the geometry nodes setup, and that's gonna be this one here. By the way, this is the project that you can download from Gumroad if you want to have something cool to play with and create other projects, and of course if you want to support what I do with this channel. So thank you very much to all of you that are purchasing the project file from Gumroad. That helps me keep going. Also, a big thank you to all the people subscribing to my channel, commenting on the videos, liking the videos. This is also very important, especially your feedback. It's really important to me because I want to make better videos for you guys. So without further ado, let's move into this project. This is how the geometry nodes setup looks like. And as you can see, you have a lot of parameters exposed. Important ones to control the animation are this growth wire start and end, because as you can see, if we go at frame 72, we start to get wires, and by the frame 480, we have the full effect completed. And those two values got passed through a map range that has as a frame plugged as an input, and that creates a 0 to 1 factor, the one that you see here. And if you take this input, you will find it here. You give it a name, this one, and then if you plug this name into attribute node here, you get that 0 to 1 factor that it's used in this preset. Before going to this preset, I'm going to show you the world shader, the one that you see here. The one in the demo, it's actually really cool. It's a volumetric shader on the world, and in order to see anything, then of course you need a lamp. So I use the sun lamp here with these values that you see here. For the camera, I played a little bit with the depth of field by doing some animation. Nothing special, but let's look at this material. What is it composed of? We have a purple module, that means an animation, and as you can see, it's playing with the scale of the mapping, object mapping, and it's basically making things move around, as you can see, creating this kind of like a kaleidoscope effect. Really cool. By using a hashtag frame to get the frame, and a speed control multiplied by that pass through a sine node to get this kind of motion. Sorry for my drawing skills that are not. Then I remap that -1 to 1, that is the output of the sine, to these values 1 and 0.1, and that means that the scale of this will be jumping between 1 and 0.1, meaning 1/10, and that's going to give us this animation. How the texture was built, we have this wave texture that looks like this. I'm using the node wrangler add-on to let me close this one to show you. Control click on this. We have this wave texture here on the X, on the Y, and on the Z, and by mixing this texture together, we get this result that you see here. I divide for the first two and then multiply by this. I make sure the scale is common to all of them, and then after doing all this, I passed it through a color ramp and got this result that you see here. So as soon as we start to play with the animation, we get this stuff going on. And all of this is used as a density controller. So we control basically the density of this principal volume. And the color of this one is controlled by doing this mask ref texture, pass through color ramp to get this. And this is a factor to mix between these two colors, giving us this result. And when I passed everything to a hue saturation node to decrease the brightness of the entire thing, and that was fed to the emission color, and that ended up in giving us this result that you see here. Awesome. So this is how the world shader was created. Back to the hologram shader. Let's look a little bit on it. As you can see, it's used on this hollow surface, meaning the surface of this object. Let me move to another frame so we can see the object better. Something like this. So this is used in a bunch of places. We have this surface that you see here, and it's also, if we get close, we have this grid-like wireframe on top of it that it's using. So hollow surface and hollow grid, they both use this one, but with different settings. So let's see what it has inside. It has this nice setup. Everything is driven by that attribute from the geometry nodes, 0 to 1 factor. So the output is a mixed shader. We have a transparent. So we basically control the transparency, and an emission shader. So we move from the full transparency to this emission shader based on this control. So now, having this exposed minimum value, we decide when we start to show basically the emission shader, at what point of the animation. So we can decide to start to show the emission shader at the beginning or all the way to the end, just by controlling this parameter reveal delay. Everything else is the emission shader that we have a final transparency output, because this is using alpha hashed activated here, or if you go to the material all the way here, alpha hashed and backface culling, it's activated. So we have again a mix between a transparent shader and this emission shader, and this is controlling the final opacity. And this one also, as you can see, is used to create this pattern that you see here. We have this pattern on the shape that is basically this noise texture, for which I exposed all the parameters so you can control it from outside. And this noise texture is passed through this map range, so you can see it, how it looks. It looks like this. Let me plug it like this. Now we can see it. And the reason I didn't use a color ramp but a map range was so that I can expose these values. As you can see here, we have minimum and maximum that are exposed to the outside. Then that's something that you cannot do with the color ramp, because you can't expose these values here. You would have to use drivers to take it out, but this way you can simply do the same thing. This is controlling if we look at the color ramp again, the output is basically controlling the values of these ones. And the inputs are controlling their position here, just so that you would know what's going on here. So if we look at this thing here, we have this emission shader that has the color exposed and the strength, and this one is mixed with a transparent shader that creates this texture on the surface that you can see here. And this texture is controlled by playing with these values that are also exposed. So if I'm going out of here, I can play with this upper limit, but not on the holo grid. Let me move to surface here. Okay. So now we can play with these values and control this. As you can see, we can control the texture from inside. And why I did this entire thing here to control the texture from inside? Well, if we follow this, we have these values going here, minimum and maximum controlled, and they go through a map range. So we can control the map from outside the minimum and maximum, but the value for this map range is controlled by this factor. So what is happening is that as the animation in geometry nodes progresses, these islands from here are growing in size, following this setup here. So basically, we make this grow bigger or smaller with the animation. And we can decide the final look by playing with this upper and lower limit. So something like this, for example. And as the animation progresses, if we go, you can see what's going on. Our islands are basically growing. And that creates the shader that you saw here. If we plug it again here, see, you get this transparent looking through material created by this emission mixed with this transparent shader. And again, by mixing a transparent shader to the end, you can decide for the final transparency here. So you can make it look like this, or you can make it look a lot less visible, basically. So this is how this was constructed. As a quick recap, we use the 0 to 1 factor that controls the animation from geometry nodes to control the reveal of the holographic shader opacity that is mixing this transparency with the emission shader. And another thing that we can control is this texture that is applied to the emission shader via this map range node. We can control the final look of this by controlling the output of the map range, and we can control the growing of the texture by controlling this input from 0 to 1. And this being fed to this noise texture, we will control the growth of the texture. So we start by having something like this, and then it's becoming visible, and it's starting this noise to grow and cover more of the surface, as you can see here. And using this preset, I created also this holo grid with simply different settings here for the delay and stuff like that. For the wires that you see here, we have something else interesting. We use another parameter from the geometry nodes. If we look here, we have this wire point random with this name, this is important from the output attributes. This is basically adding a random value on each string here, each spline. So if we go to this one again, we get a 0 to 1 value that it's used to create this variation on the surface. So as we play the animation, let me move to some frame here. We get this effect on the wires, this moving. So how was this set up? We use this random value to control the strength of this emission shader. So everything, as you can see, it's multiplied. All these values are multiplied by whatever is going on here. So we get the frame of the animation, and for controlling of the zones, we get this 1 divided by this value. So basically, the brighter values will give a smaller factor. Brighter meaning closer to 1 values will get a smaller factor, meaning they will move less. We then pass everything through a sine node, and then we add this glow variation, making sure that everything has some glow. If we put this on to 0, we'll get this. So this controls the minimum value, and then this controls the maximum. If we put it like this, we get nothing, and this will increase to whatever value we want. So by adding all this random variation from here and multiplying it with this value, we get this result, as you can see here, where we have these things moving around. Again, because we use a random value that is stored on every point of this spline, and then we use that random value in conjunction with the frame to give different movement of this glowing, different variation of glow for this, and also making it follow organic loop by passing it through a sine node. We get this result that you see here. For the sparks, meaning the glowing dots on this material, if we move a little bit in the animation, we have these glowing dots. They also have some animation on them. We have an emission shader, and we control the strength, and we created a loop that is cycling through different brightness levels based on the frame. This is controlling the speed. Again, we use a sine, and we remap this range of the sine from -1 and 1. This is what the sine function gives you, to these values, 0.1 and 1, 0.2 and 1. And then taking advantage of the fact that each and every dot is seen as a different object, we can generate a random value with the object info node that is between 0 and 1, and I remap that from to 1 and 2, and I multiply it with whatever strength I wanted for the dots glow to have. So if I put like 1 or like 5 maybe, you can see some of them are brighter and some of them are less bright because of this random node. Without this one, they will be all just the same. But this gives us certain variation of brightness, and then we can make that brightness go up and down by using this setup here. Frame, sine, and remap the range to get 0.1. Again, we can decide here the maximum glow, and this will control the minimum glow. So if we play with this value, at some point we can make the dots basically turn off. If of course we have this 0 value here, we will make the points turn off at some point based on this bit here. So that's kind of it for this shader as well. What else? The animation. I have some animation on the camera. I parented the camera to an empty, and then I animated the rotation and the scale of this empty to get this movement in the project, and then at the end to make this happen. It's all happening here. So that's gonna be the animation. And for the camera itself, I played with the depth of field and the f-stop value in order to let me switch to render view to get this effect at the beginning, fading in of this, and at the end to do the fading out. Without the depth of field and with the depth of field, we kind of get these different values, as you can see. Especially if we go somewhere like here, as you can see, the depth of field, it's working. So this is it for this project. Thank you very much for watching. Please leave your comments in the comment section, your feedback. It's important for me to polish these videos and make them more useful to you. So until the next project, have a nice day and happy blending.